The confinement order lasted 3 days on paper. In practice, it lasted until Elder Gu had seen enough symptoms to decide whether the cage was still useful. Lin Fan spent those 3 days behind a thin wooden door that everyone suddenly remembered existed. Stewards walked past more often than duty required. Outer disciples slowed near his window, speaking louder than necessary about training scores, spirit rice portions, and who had been summoned where. Wang Lei came twice with food he pretended was extra from the kitchen. Lin Ro came once with clean cloth and did not ask the wrong question. Han Wei did not come at all. That absence mattered. Men like Han Wei did not lose interest because a door closed. They changed angles. Lin Fan used the confinement as intended and as not intended. When footsteps paused outside, he coughed, breathed shallowly, and moved like a disciple whose root pain remained dangerous. When the corridor emptied, he cultivated the first burial ring in short rotations, never more than 4 at a time. He used the cold hunger to separate poison from judgment, judgment from pain, pain from decision. Progress came slowly, which was why it could be trusted. By the third dawn, the damaged root no longer felt like a cracked bowl leaking every drop of qi. It felt like a cracked bowl with a ring of black iron around the fracture. Still broken. Harder to break in the same place. That was enough for the next step. Elder Gu sent the summons after morning gruel. Not through a disciplined steward. Through the same junior clerk who recorded ration grades. That was deliberate. A punishment summons would draw fear. A medical summons would draw speculation. A ration summons drew envy, because every outer disciple understood rice more deeply than justice. Lin Fan, the clerk said through the door. Report to the lower training court for reassessment. 3 rooms went quiet at once. Lin Fan counted the breaths before answering. Too quick looked eager. Too slow looked guilty. Understood. He opened the door wearing a washed robe with the right sleeve patched at the wrist. The bruise on his shoulder had yellowed. His face remained pale enough to support the illness story. He had rubbed a little cooling powder along his collar, letting the medicinal scent remain. The first burial ring sat cold beneath his navel, obedient after the morning's second rotation. The clerk looked him over and frowned. Can you walk? Yes. If you collapse, it will delay the register. I will try not to inconvenience the register. The clerk stared, unsure whether he had been mocked. Lin Fan lowered his eyes before the question formed. Small people liked respect better when it arrived just after irritation. They walked toward the lower training court. The east lower quarter watched them pass. Lin Fan did not look toward Lin Ro's door, but he knew she was there. The faint scrape of wood, the held breath behind the paper window, the restraint. Good. She had begun learning that concern did not always need to cross a threshold. Wang Lei, less disciplined, leaned out of the wash shed with a basin in both hands. Reassessment, he blurted. The clerk snapped, do you want one as well? Wang Lei retreated so fast water sloshed over his shoes. Whispers followed Lin Fan down the path. Didn't he just get confined? Maybe they found poison. Maybe Elder Gu is punishing him again. Ration reassessment means score. Score? Him? The word moved faster than he did. Good. In the outer sect, reputation was a second body. It could be starved, struck, hidden, inflated, or used to draw attacks meant for the flesh. Lin Fan's reputation had been simple a week ago: weak root, poor rations, Zhang Hu's target. Simplicity made a person easy to step on. Now the shape had changed, but not into strength. Not yet. Unclear was better. Unclear made feet hesitate. The lower training court stood below the main test square, separated by a row of ironwood dummies, 3 stone strength blocks, and a narrow formation strip used to measure qi circulation speed. Outer disciples came here for monthly ranking assessments, ration adjustments, and humiliation disguised as instruction. The ranking board hung against the north wall, a dark slab of polished wood covered with rows of small name plaques. Most disciples never looked above the middle third. Hope was heavy when lifted too high. Lin Fan's old plaque sat near the bottom, third row from the floor. 976th among registered outer disciples. Not last. That had once been enough for the young body's pride. Now Lin Fan glanced at the number and placed it aside. Numbers mattered only because other people obeyed them. Elder Gu stood beside the formation strip with two clerks and one gray-robed deacon Lin Fan had not seen since the spirit root test. No crowd had been summoned, but the court was never empty. 6 disciples practicing palm strikes slowed. 2 sweeping attendants stopped pretending to sweep. A pair of second-tier ration disciples watched from beside the water rack. Enough witnesses. Not enough to look staged. Elder Gu's eyes moved over Lin Fan once. Your confinement ends after this assessment if your condition is stable. Yes, Elder. Do not force Qi beyond instruction. Yes, Elder. Do not collapse for sympathy. No, Elder. One of the clerks coughed into his sleeve. Elder Gu ignored him. Begin with pulse stone. The pulse stone was a waist-high gray block veined with dull copper. It did not test raw power. It tested whether a disciple could release a steady line of qi into resistant material without scattering. Weak roots produced flicker. Damaged roots produced gaps. Impatient disciples produced spikes that made the copper veins flash bright, then die. Lin Fan placed his right palm against the stone. He did not use the right palm conduit as he had during earlier emergencies. That path remained hidden. Instead, he let a thin stream of qi descend from the dantian, touch the first burial ring, and circle once before entering the meridian. The ring chilled the flow. Poison remained behind its boundary. Judgment remained outside. The qi emerged smaller than before, but cleaner. The copper veins lit. Not brightly. Evenly. The nearest practicing disciple stopped mid-strike. The clerk leaned closer. Elder Gu's expression did not change, which meant he had expected some improvement and was calculating the amount. Hold, he said. Lin Fan held. 10 breaths. 15. 20. At the 23rd breath, he let the flow waver by design. Not collapse. Waver. A sick disciple who improved too neatly became a lie. A sick disciple who held beyond his previous record and then trembled became medicine, discipline, and perhaps hidden grit. Enough, Elder Gu said. Lin Fan withdrew his hand. The burial ring tightened once, hungry for the resistance it had just tasted. No. The hunger quieted. Barely. He lowered his hand inside his sleeve before anyone saw the fingertips stiffen. The clerk wrote quickly. The second clerk checked the old register and frowned harder. Previous stable hold was 6 breaths, the second clerk murmured. The court heard him. Of course it did. Outer disciples could miss instruction, danger, and good advice, but never a comparison that changed another person's rank. Elder Gu looked at the clerk. The clerk paled and lowered his brush. Stone lift, Elder Gu said. The strength blocks sat in order of difficulty. Lin Fan ignored the largest 2 and walked to the smallest block, as a low-grade disciple should. It weighed enough to test muscle, balance, and qi reinforcement through the legs. Zhang Hu could lift the second block easily. Han Wei could likely lift the third with one hand if he wished to impress no one in particular. Lin Fan's old body had struggled with the smallest. He placed both hands under the grips. The body was still thin. The shoulders still hurt. The root still punished waist. He lifted anyway. Not with strength. With structure. Knees aligned. Breath lowered. Spine stacked. She did not flood the arms. It touched joints at the right moments, reinforcing tendons rather than muscles. The block rose to knee height, then waist height, then settled back down without a thud. Several disciples inhaled at once. Lin Fan let his breath catch after releasing the weight. The catch was not entirely false. The burial ring had kept the qi steady, but his flesh remained weak. Technique could borrow from structure. It could not invent meat. Again, the clerk asked before remembering he had no authority. Elder Gu glanced at Lin Fan's left shoulder. No. Record controlled lift, smallest stone, no rebound. No rebound mattered more than the lift. A weak disciple could strain once and suffer later. A useful disciple could produce output without damaging sect property, himself, or the elder's patience. The third test was the formation strip. This one created more danger. The strip measured footwork and chi timing through 10 iron markers. It rewarded speed, but punished irregular circulation. If Lin Fan moved too well, Han Wei would hear by noon. If he moved too poorly, Elder Gu would suspect concealment. The correct answer lay in the ugly middle, better than his old rank, worse than his knowledge. He stepped onto the first marker. Cold iron drank heat through his soul. The clerk lifted a counting bead. Begin. Lin Fan moved. He did not use sovereign footwork. He used an outer sect training step, corrected by experience but not transformed beyond recognition. Heel before toe on the second marker to hide lower body stability. Slight delay before the fifth to show root pain. Controlled stumble on the eighth, recovered with the right hand touching the air as if seeking balance. The observers saw effort. Elder Gu saw selection. That could not be helped. Men worth deceiving eventually noticed they were being given a picture. The key was making the picture useful enough that they delayed tearing the frame apart. Lin Fan finished at the 10th marker. Not fast. Clean. Too clean for a disciple ranked near the bottom. Not clean enough for a prodigy. The counting bead clicked into the clerk's bowl. Time places him. The clerk checked the strip record. His voice thinned. Around the 600 rank, if combined with pulse stone improvement. The lower court went silent. 600 was not glory. It was worse. Glory belonged to the distant top, where ordinary disciples could admire without feeling threatened. 600 was close enough to touch. It meant someone they had laughed at had climbed past hundreds of names without asking permission. Elder Gu said, recalculate with current injury. The clerk swallowed. Adjusted potential would be 500. Now the silence changed. Lin Fan lowered his gaze and let his face pale. Let them see the word injury and imagine what rank might appear after recovery. Let them fear the wrong ceiling. Elder Gu tapped the register once. Official placement, 643rd. Provisional. No challenge rights for 7 days due to medical observation. Ration grade raised by 1/2 tier. Training access restricted to daylight. Report symptoms every evening. A controlled reward. A controlled leash. Exactly as expected. The clerk removed Lin Fan's old plaque from the bottom rows. Wood scraped softly against wood. That sound carried farther than any announcement. The new position was not high on the ranking board. It sat in the muddy middle, surrounded by names belonging to disciples who had worked for years to avoid being forgotten. The clerk slid Lin Fan's plaque into place between a boy with a spear scar across his cheek and a girl known for breaking fingers during sparring. 976th vanished. 643rd appeared. The spear-scarred boy arrived while the clerk's hand was still on the board. He had come from the equipment shed carrying a bundle of cracked spear shafts over one shoulder. Sweat darkened his collar. His eyes moved to the board by habit, then stopped where his name had shifted down one place. One place. That was all Lin Fan had taken from him. The boy's jaw hardened as if the loss were an insult delivered personally. He looked at Lin Fan, then at Elder Gu, then at the clerk, calculating whether anger had anywhere safe to go. It did not. He lowered his bundle and said nothing. The finger-breaking girl arrived next. She noticed faster. Her gaze flicked from the board to Lin Fan's hands, then to his feet, then to his face. Unlike the boy, she did not look offended first. She looked interested. That was more dangerous. Rank was not a ladder in the outer sect. It was a crowded ledge. Every upward movement pressed someone else closer to the edge they had spent years pretending was far away. Lin Fan's new plaque did not threaten the top 100, the geniuses, or the disciples already claimed by elders. It threatened the middle, the ones who survived by being just competent enough not to be discarded. Middle-ranked disciples hated surprises more than elites did. Elites could call surprises beneath them. The middle had to measure whether surprises would eat. Elder Gu allowed the silence to stretch until everyone had felt it. Then he said, "Disperse." The word snapped the court back into motion, but badly. Practice resumed out of rhythm. A palm strike landed too low. Someone missed a breath count on the formation strip. The spear-scarred boy lifted his cracked shafts and left without turning his back fully to Lin Fan. Good. The board had begun working. No bell rang. No elder praised him. No crowd cheered. The sect merely adjusted a piece of wood. And the outer mountain felt the shock like a small bone snapping under skin. Lin Fan bowed to Elder Gu. "Thank you for the assessment." "Do not thank me," Elder Gu said. "Remain stable enough to justify the ink." "Yes, Elder." As Lin Fan turned to leave, he felt eyes strike his back from every side of the court. Fear. Jealousy. Calculation. Interest. Useful. At the gate, a disciple he did not know stepped aside too late, then too quickly, revealing that he had intended not to move at all until his body changed its mind. Lin Fan passed without looking at him. The first burial ring rotated once beneath his navel, cold and quiet. The ranking board remained behind him. By noon, the entire outer sect would know that a damaged low-grade disciple had climbed 300 ranks while under punishment. By evening, half of them would decide it was impossible. The other half would decide it was unfair. Both conclusions would make them move. Lin Fan did not return directly to his room. That would make the assessment look like a wound requiring retreat. Instead, he walked the outer loop of the lower court once, slowly enough to be seen and quickly enough not to invite conversation. The route passed the water rack, the old weapon baskets, the chalk line for paired drills, and the practice posts where low-ranked disciples struck wood until their knuckles bled and called it cultivation. 3 disciples stopped training as he passed. 1 resumed too fast. 1 waited until Lin Fan's shadow left his feet. 1 kept still and watched the rhythm of Lin Fan's breathing. Lin Fan marked them in order. The first was afraid of seeming afraid. The second was afraid. The third might become useful or troublesome, depending on who owned his curiosity. Small changes. Small harvests. At the water rack, Hanwei's absence was visible precisely because men had expected him to appear. Several disciples glanced toward the gate as if a stronger figure should arrive to explain what had happened. When no one came, they looked back at the board. Better. Let the first shock arrive without Hanwei's shadow over it. The number 643 did not make Lin Fan strong. It made him unresolved. Unresolved things drew hands.